The first thing I noticed was the empty chair. It had my name on it, Claire Morgan. My sister Emily's wedding was supposed to be the happiest day of her life, and I had spent the entire morning making sure nothing went wrong. The flowers had arrived late. I fixed it. The photographer's schedule was wrong. I corrected it. The caterer was missing 2 tables. I called them myself. Nobody thanked me. Honestly, I wasn't expecting them to. I was used to being the person behind everything, the one who solved problems quietly so everyone else could enjoy the celebration. But as I walked toward the garden where the family photos were being arranged, I thought maybe this time would be different. Maybe for once, I wouldn't be standing behind the camera. Maybe I'd actually be in the picture. My mother was standing beside Emily in her lavender dress. Emily was glowing in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids, relatives, and photographers. I smiled and stepped toward them. Then Emily looked at me. Her smile disappeared. She quickly walked over and lowered her voice. "Claire, can you do me a favor?" I smiled back. "Of course." She glanced toward the photographer, then toward the wall behind me. "Could you just stand over there for the family photos?" I didn't understand. "Over where?" She pointed. "Near the wall." For a second, I thought she was joking. I looked at my mother. She heard every word, but she didn't say anything. I looked back at Emily. "I'm your sister." "I know." Her voice became quieter. "It's just, the photographer has a certain arrangement. We need the pictures to look right." Look right. Those 3 words hurt more than I expected. I looked at the group again. Emily, her husband, our mother, her new in-laws, the bridesmaids, everyone who apparently belonged in the picture. Except me. I forced a small smile. "Okay." I stepped away. The stone wall was only a few feet behind me. I placed one hand against it and watched everyone else gather beneath the golden afternoon light. The photographer raised his camera. "Beautiful. Everyone closer." They moved closer. I stayed where my sister had told me to stand, near the wall. Then the camera flashed, once, twice, again, and with every photograph, something inside me became quieter. Not angry, not yet, just finished. A few minutes later, I walked into the reception hall. I wanted to find my seat. I found the table. Then I stopped. My place card was still there, Claire Morgan. But someone else was sitting in my chair. A young man I'd never seen before, had a phone mounted on a tiny tripod, filming my mother while she laughed beside him. I looked around. Then I finally understood. My seat hadn't been accidentally given away. Someone had decided that another person belonged there more than I did. And that was when I remembered the cream envelope inside my handbag. The envelope I'd brought for Emily. The envelope containing the biggest gift I'd ever planned to give my sister. I touched it through the fabric of my bag. For the first time that day, I smiled because Emily had no idea what was inside that envelope. And she had absolutely no idea what I was about to do with it. To understand why those words hurt me so much, you have to understand who Emily and I were before that wedding. We were only 3 years apart. When we were little, people always said we were opposites. Emily was the one who could walk into a room and somehow make everyone notice her. She had the bright smile, the loud laugh, the confidence to talk to strangers as if she'd known them for years. I was different. I was quieter. I noticed things other people missed. If something broke, I fixed it. If someone forgot something, I remembered it. If there wasn't enough money for something, I found a way to make the numbers work. My mother used to joke that Emily was the sunshine in our family, and I was the foundation underneath the house. I laughed every time she said it. I didn't realize how much truth there was in that joke. When our father lost his job during my final year of college, our family went through a difficult period. Bills started piling up. My mother worried constantly. Emily was still in college and had dreams of becoming a wedding stylist. She talked about beautiful venues, expensive dresses, flowers, and grand celebrations. I was the practical one, so I got a second job. I worked during the day and handled bookkeeping for a small construction company at night. I didn't tell Emily how exhausted I was. I didn't want her worrying about me. When she needed money for a certification course, I paid for it. When she needed a laptop for her new business, I bought one. When she moved into her first apartment, I quietly covered the security deposit. Every time she thanked me, I told her the same thing. Don't worry about it, we're sisters. And I meant it. Back then, helping Emily didn't feel like a burden. It felt like love. There was one night I remember especially well. Emily had just gotten her first major styling job. It wasn't a huge event, maybe 80 guests. But to her, it was everything. She had spent weeks preparing, and 2 days before the wedding, one of her vendors cancelled. She called me crying. "Claire, I'm going to ruin everything." I left my apartment, drove across town, found another vendor, negotiated the price, and stayed until nearly midnight, helping her arrange the decorations. The next morning, Emily hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "You saved me," I laughed. "You'll get me back someday." She looked at me and said something I'll never forget. Always. At the time, I believed her. Years passed. Emily's business grew. Mine grew too, although mine was quieter. She had social media followers. I had clients. She attended glamorous events. I spent evenings reviewing contracts and checking numbers. She became known for creating beautiful weddings. And I became the person she called whenever something went wrong. Need a vendor? Call Claire. Need a contract reviewed? Call Claire. Need money until next month? Call Claire. Need someone to deal with a difficult client? Call Claire. I never complained, because every time Emily needed me, some part of me still remembered that little girl who had once cried into my shoulder because she thought her first big opportunity was disappearing. Then, 3 years before the wedding, Emily met Daniel. He was charming, ambitious, and completely different from the men she'd dated before. Within 6 months, they were engaged, and Emily immediately began planning the wedding of her dreams. She didn't want an ordinary wedding. She wanted the kind of wedding people would talk about for years. A luxury venue, a professional photographer, a designer gown, a live band, floral installations, and a guest list filled with people who mattered to her new social circle. I was happy for her, at least I thought I was. Then one evening, Emily came to my apartment with a folder. She placed it on my kitchen table. "Claire, I need your help." I opened it. Inside was the wedding budget. The number at the bottom made me stare twice. It was far beyond what she could afford. Emily sat across from me. "I know it's a lot." I looked at her. "How much do you have?" She hesitated. "Not enough." That should have been the moment I said no. Instead, I asked the question I'd asked my entire life. "How much do you need?" Emily reached across the table and took my hand. "Just enough to make this perfect." I looked into my sister's eyes, and I made the mistake I had been making for years. I said yes. What I didn't know then was that the money I was about to give her wouldn't just pay for a wedding. It would buy me something I thought I already had, a place in my sister's life. and I wouldn't understand the price of that place until the day she told me to stand near the wall. The next morning, Emily called me before I had even finished my coffee. I already knew what she was going to ask. She had that nervous little pause she always used when she wanted something from me. Claire? Yeah? I found the perfect venue. I smiled. That sounds good. It's more than good. She started describing it. A historic estate outside the city, tall windows, a huge garden, a stone staircase where she could take wedding portraits, a ballroom with crystal chandeliers. I could hear the excitement in her voice. Then she gave me the price. I stopped stirring my coffee. Emily, I know. That's almost twice what we discussed. I know. There was silence. Then she said softly, but Claire, this is the one. I closed my eyes. That sentence had always worked on me. When we were children, this is the one meant the dress she wanted for graduation. Later, it meant the apartment she couldn't afford, then the business course, then the laptop. There was always a reason, and I had always found a way. How much is the deposit? I asked. She exhaled. 20,000? I stared at the wall across from me. $20,000 wasn't something I could casually hand over. It was money I had saved for my own plans. A renovation, a long vacation, maybe even a down payment on a small office for my business. But those plans suddenly felt less important. When do they need it? I asked. Friday. Emily went quiet for a moment. Then she whispered, I knew you'd help me. Something about those words bothered me, not because she was asking, because she didn't sound surprised that I would say yes. She sounded certain. As if my money had already become part of her wedding budget. Still, I transferred the money. The venue was booked. Emily called me crying with happiness. You're amazing, Claire. I laughed. Just promise me you're going to enjoy your wedding. I will. Then she added, and I'm going to make sure you have the best seat in the room. I smiled. I'm holding you to that. She laughed. You'll be right next to Mom. I believed her. For the next several months, I became part sister, part wedding planner, and part emergency fund. The florist suddenly needed a larger deposit. I helped. The caterer raised the price. I negotiated with them. The photographer wanted payment 6 weeks earlier than expected. I covered the difference. Emily kept saying she would reimburse me. I promise, Claire. I heard that sentence so many times that eventually I stopped counting. Then one night, she called me at almost midnight. Her voice sounded panicked. Claire, I have a problem. I sat up in bed. What happened? The wedding coordinator says we need another payment before they finalize everything. How much? She told me. I didn't answer immediately. She started crying. I don't want to disappoint everyone. I rubbed my forehead. Emily, please. I looked at the ceiling. Then I opened my banking app. I transferred the money. A few seconds later, she texted me, You're the best sister in the world. I stared at those words for a long time. Then I smiled, because I wanted to believe them. I wanted to believe that all those years of helping her had meant something beyond money. A week later, Emily invited me over to look at the final wedding plans. Her living room was covered with mood boards, flower samples, invitation designs, table settings, and photographs of dresses. She was glowing. She picked up one of the seating charts. Look. I leaned closer. She pointed at the head table. Me, Daniel, Mom, his parents, my maid of honor. I smiled. Looks beautiful. Then she moved a finger down to another table. You'll be here. I looked. It was close to the dance floor. Not the family table, but still a good seat. I laughed softly. You promised me the best seat. She rolled her eyes playfully. Claire, don't be difficult. Your family. You'll be there. I didn't push it. I should have. Because when someone keeps moving your place and you keep accepting it, eventually they stop thinking you had a place at all. The wedding invitations went out 2 weeks later. Emily posted photographs online. Her followers loved them. The venue, the flowers, the dress, the engagement photos. Everyone commented on how perfect everything looked. Nobody knew how much of that perfection had been paid for by the quiet woman standing behind the scenes. I didn't mind. At least that's what I told myself. Then, 3 weeks before the wedding, Emily came to my office. She was carrying another folder. I looked up from my desk. What's wrong? She smiled. Nothing's wrong. She placed the folder in front of me. We just made one little upgrade. I opened it. It was an invoice. My eyes went straight to the total. My stomach tightened. Emily. She sat down across from me. It's for the reception. This is not a little upgrade, she laughed. Come on, it's my wedding. I looked at the invoice again, then at her. You already owe me a lot. Her smile faded for just a second. Then she leaned forward. I'll pay you back. I wanted to believe her, so I nodded. Okay, she hugged me. Thank you. As she walked toward the door, she turned around. Oh, and Claire. Yeah? The photographer is doing a very specific family photo setup. I smiled. Okay. She hesitated, then said, just don't wear anything too noticeable. I laughed awkwardly. What? You know how photographers are. They want the pictures to look coordinated. She left before I could respond. I sat alone in my office. For the first time, I wondered why being included in my sister's wedding suddenly felt like something I had to earn. But I pushed the thought away. I had already paid for the venue. I had helped build the wedding, and I still believed that somewhere inside all those flowers, invoices, and carefully planned photographs, there would be a place for me. I just didn't know yet that the most important seat at that wedding was the one my sister had already decided to take away. 3 weeks before the wedding, I started noticing things I couldn't explain. At first, they were small, so small that I almost felt foolish for noticing them. Emily stopped asking for my opinion. She used to send me photographs of the flowers and ask which arrangement I liked better. Now she sent them to her wedding planner. She used to call me whenever she had a problem. Now she called people I had never met. And whenever I asked how the wedding was going, she gave me the same answer. Everything is perfect, but somehow I was no longer part of that perfection. One Saturday afternoon, I drove to Emily's apartment with a folder of vendor contracts she had asked me to review. I knocked. No answer. I called her. Nothing. Then I heard voices inside. I knocked again. This time, the door opened. Emily looked surprised to see me. Oh, Claire. I held up the folder. You asked me to check these. She glanced at it. Right. I forgot. She stepped aside. I walked in. There were 3 women sitting around her dining table. One of them was her wedding planner. The other 2 were women I had never met. Emily introduced them quickly. Claire, this is Vanessa. She handles our social media. Then she pointed to the other woman. And this is Rachel. She's helping with the guest experience. I smiled politely. Nice to meet you. They smiled back, but nobody invited me to sit. I stood there holding the folder. After a few seconds, Emily finally said, You can leave it on the counter. I placed it down. Do you want me to stay? There was a pause. Then Emily smiled. No, We've got everything handled. Everything handled, I nodded. Okay. As I walked toward the door, I heard one of the women say, "That's your sister?" Emily laughed softly. Yeah. I stopped for half a second. Then I kept walking. I didn't hear what came next. Maybe that was a blessing. The following week, I received an email from the photographer. It contained a questionnaire. Family members, wedding party, important guests, special photo requests. I filled everything out. Then, at the bottom, I saw a question. Who should be included in the immediate family portraits? I typed, Emily's sister, Claire Morgan. I hit send. 2 days later, I received a reply. Thank you. We'll coordinate the family photos directly with the bride. Something about that sentence made my stomach tighten. I called Emily. Did the photographer contact you? Yes. About the family photos? Yeah. What did you tell him? She laughed. Claire, why are you interrogating me? I'm not. I just want to know what the plan is. The plan is fine. Am I in the family portraits? Silence. It lasted only 2 seconds, but I noticed. Of course your family. That wasn't my question. Another pause. Then she said, We're keeping the formal pictures pretty tight. What does that mean? It means immediate family. I stared at the wall. I am your immediate family. Claire. Her voice changed. Not angry, just impatient. You're making this more complicated than it needs to be. I swallowed. Okay. Good. Then she hung up. I sat at my desk for several minutes without moving. I wanted to be angry, but instead, I felt embarrassed because I had just asked my own sister if I belonged in her wedding photographs. And somehow, I had been made to feel like I was asking for something unreasonable. That evening, my mother called. She sounded cheerful. Are you excited? Of course. You should be. Emily's wedding is going to be beautiful. I know. There was a pause. Then I asked, Mom, do you know about the family photos? What about them? Emily says they're keeping them small. My mother laughed. Oh, honey, don't worry about that. I wasn't worried. Just let Emily have her day. I looked down at my hands. I'm trying. You know how much pressure she's under. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I know. After we hung up, I opened my laptop. I pulled up every payment I had made for Emily's wedding. Venue deposit, catering, flowers, photography, transportation, decorations. The numbers filled the screen. I stared at them. Then I closed the laptop. I didn't want to think about money. Not that night. But the next morning, something else happened. Emily sent me a message. Can you come by the venue tomorrow? I replied, Sure. What do you need? Her answer came almost immediately. I want you to help with the final vendor payments. I smiled bitterly. Of course, I was still useful. That afternoon, I met her at the venue. It was beautiful, more beautiful than I had imagined. The ballroom was almost finished. Huge floral arrangements stood beside the entrance. Gold candles lined the tables. A string quartet was rehearsing in the corner. Emily walked through the room with her wedding planner, pointing at details. She looked happy. I watched her for a moment. Then she turned toward me. Claire, I need you to handle the final payment schedule. I nodded. Okay. She handed me a folder. I opened it. Then I noticed something. There was a seating chart inside. I looked at the tables. Table 1, Table 2, Table 3. I scanned the names. Emily, Daniel, her parents, his parents, her maid of honor, important guests. I kept looking. My name wasn't there. I checked again. Nothing. I turned the page. Still nothing. Finally, I found it. Table 14. My name was printed in small black letters. Claire Morgan. I looked at Emily. Table 14. She smiled. Yeah. I glanced toward the ballroom. Where is that? Near the back. Near the back? It's still a good table. I looked at the chart again. Why am I not sitting with the family? Emily sighed. Claire, please. What? It's complicated. I almost laughed. It looks pretty simple to me. She lowered her voice. We have some important people coming. So I need the main tables for them. I looked at her. And I'm not important? Her expression changed. For a moment she looked guilty. Then she said the sentence that stayed with me. It's not about who's important. I waited. She smiled. It's about what looks right. There it was, again. What looks right? I nodded slowly. Okay. She hugged me. You understand, right? I forced myself to smile. Of course. But as she walked away, I looked down at the seating chart one more time. Table 14, near the back, far from the family. I folded the chart and placed it back inside the folder. I didn't argue. I didn't complain. I simply made a mental note. Because for the first time, I wasn't looking at Emily's wedding as a sister. I was looking at it as someone who had spent her entire life paying attention to details. And the details were starting to tell me something Emily wasn't willing to say. My place in her wedding had already been decided. And it wasn't beside her. It was somewhere near the wall. The next morning, I woke up with one thought in my mind. Table 14. I told myself it didn't matter. A seat was just a seat. A photograph was just a photograph. And yet, I couldn't stop thinking about the way Emily had looked at me when she said, it's about what looks right. So I did what I always did when something didn't make sense. I checked the numbers. I opened the wedding payment folder on my computer. The venue deposit was there. The catering payments were there. The florist, the photographer, the transportation company. Everything I'd personally paid for was listed. But then I noticed something strange. There was a payment I didn't recognize. $18,500. It had been transferred from the account I had used to help Emily with the wedding expenses. The description simply said, Consulting, EM Events. I stared at it. Emily's business was called Emily Morgan Events. I knew the company well. I'd helped her set it up. But I had never heard of a consulting payment this large. I checked the date, 3 months earlier. I checked again. Then I opened the bank statement. The money had been transferred from the wedding account to Emily's business account. From there, it had been split into several smaller payments. A designer, a luxury hotel, a marketing agency, and one payment that made me stop breathing for a second. $7,200, Diamond and Veil. I knew that name. Emily had mentioned it before. It was the jewelry store where she had bought her wedding jewelry. I leaned back in my chair. She hadn't used the money for the wedding. She had moved part of it into her business account and then used it for things that had nothing to do with the wedding budget she'd shown me. I kept digging, not because I wanted to catch my sister, because I needed to understand. And the more I looked, the worse it became. The $20,000 venue deposit I'd given her was legitimate. But another $12,000 I'd transferred later had gone somewhere else. A luxury hotel, a jewelry store, a branding agency, a personal credit card payment. I sat completely still. For years, I had trusted Emily without questioning where my help went. But now, I was looking at the evidence, and the evidence was telling me something painful. She hadn't just accepted my help. She had started treating it like an unlimited resource. My phone rang. It was Emily. I stared at the screen before answering. Hi? Claire, are you coming tomorrow? To the venue? Yes. I'll be there. Good. She sounded cheerful. Then she said, "Oh, and I need another favor." I closed my eyes. "What kind?" "The florist needs the final payment." "How much?" There was a pause. "About 4,000. I looked at the spreadsheet on my screen. "Emily, I thought that was already paid." "It was?" "Then why do they need another payment?" She laughed nervously. "It's an upgrade." "Another upgrade?" "Claire, please don't start." I didn't answer. She sighed. "You know how important this wedding is to me." I looked at the transactions again. "I know." "So?" I swallowed. "Send me the invoice." She immediately sounded relieved. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand." We hung up. I didn't send the money. Not yet. Instead, I called the florist directly. The woman who answered checked the invoice number. "Yes," she said. "The account is fully paid." I frowned. "Fully paid?" "Yes." "There's no balance?" "No, ma'am." I thanked her and hung up. My hands were cold. I called Emily back. She answered quickly. "Hey." "The florist says they're fully paid." Silence. "What?" "They said there is no outstanding balance." Another pause. Then Emily laughed. "Oh, right." I waited. "I forgot. The wedding planner must have handled it." "The planner?" "Yes." I knew she was lying, and for the first time in my life, I didn't pretend not to notice. "Okay," I said. "Okay?" "Yeah." She relaxed. "Good. I'll see you tomorrow." The call ended. I sat there staring at my phone. Something had changed. Not in Emily. In me. For years, whenever she lied, I had found an excuse for her. She was stressed. She was young. She was overwhelmed. She was trying to build something. She was my sister. But now I understood something. Being someone's sister didn't mean you had to ignore what they were doing. That evening, I opened the wedding account again. I went back 18 months. I checked every transfer, every payment, every withdrawal. And then I found it. A transfer for $15,000. The date was almost exactly a year before the wedding. I remembered it immediately. Emily had called me that night. She told me she needed the money for a business opportunity, a temporary venue deposit. She'd promised it would be returned within a few months. I had believed her. The money had gone directly into her business account. I opened the transaction history. 9 days later, the money had been moved. Not to a venue, not to a business investment, to a wedding-related account. Then I saw another transfer, and another. Slowly, the pieces came together. The wedding wasn't being funded by Emily. It was being funded by money she had borrowed from me. Money she had promised to use for business. Money she had never told me she was using for the wedding. I printed the statements. Then I printed the original agreement she'd signed when she borrowed the money. I put everything into a folder. For the first time, I wasn't looking at my sister's wedding as an emotional event. I was looking at it as an account that didn't balance. And there was something else, something much bigger. I opened the final page of the business records. There was a new agreement, a sponsorship contract. Emily's wedding was being used to promote her event company. The venue, the decorations, the guest list, even the photographer. A major part of the wedding had been designed as a promotional event for her business. That explained everything. The expensive flowers, the second photographer, the social media team, the influencer guests, the obsession with how everything looked. Emily wasn't just getting married. She was building a brand, and I had been paying for part of the advertisement. I sat back in my chair. Suddenly, the seating chart made sense. Table 14 wasn't about space. It wasn't about the photographer. It wasn't even about important guests. It was about image. Emily wanted the wedding to look like a glamorous success story. And I didn't fit the picture. I was the sister who knew where the money came from, the sister who knew what was real behind the decorations, the sister who could see the numbers. That night, I opened my handbag. Inside was the cream envelope I'd prepared for Emily, the gift I'd planned to give her, $20,000. I had planned to hand it to her at the reception. I had even written a message inside, "For your new beginning, with love, Claire." I read it again. Then I folded the card. I didn't tear it. I didn't throw it away. I simply put it back inside the envelope. And for the first time, I wondered if Emily had ever loved me, or if she'd simply learned that I was the one person who would always pay. The next morning, I put the envelope in my handbag. I still went to the wedding. I still wore the dress I'd bought. I still smiled when people congratulated me. Because I wasn't going to ruin Emily's wedding. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to expose her in front of everyone. I was simply going to watch. And I knew one thing for certain. If Emily wanted her wedding to look perfect, I was going to let her have her perfect picture, even if I wasn't standing in it. By 6 o'clock, the wedding looked perfect. Exactly the way Emily had wanted. The gardens were glowing beneath strings of warm lights. White flowers covered the entrance. The musicians were playing softly near the fountain. Every table had been arranged perfectly. Every glass was polished. Every detail looked expensive, beautiful, untouchable. And I stood there knowing that some of that beauty had been paid for with money Emily had borrowed from me and never returned. Still, I smiled, because this was her day, and despite everything I had discovered, I wasn't there to destroy it. I was there to let her have it. At least, that's what I told myself. The ceremony began at sunset. I sat several rows behind the front. Not because I had chosen that seat, because an usher had politely moved me there. My mother sat closer to Emily. Daniel's parents were in the first row. The bridesmaids were gathered along the aisle. And I watched my little sister walk toward the man she was going to marry. For a few seconds I forgot everything. She looked beautiful, and I felt something unexpected. Love, real, painful love. No matter what she had done, she was still my little sister. The girl who used to crawl into my bed when she was afraid of thunderstorms. The girl who once held my hand during our father's funeral because she was too scared to stand alone. The girl whose first business check I had framed because I was so proud of her. I watched her reach Daniel. She smiled. He took her hands. And for a moment, I allowed myself to believe that maybe everything could still be okay. Maybe the seating chart didn't matter. Maybe the money didn't matter. Maybe the things I discovered were just misunderstandings. Maybe after today, Emily would remember that I was her sister. Then the ceremony ended. Everyone stood. People applauded. Emily and Daniel walked back down the aisle. I clapped harder than anyone because despite everything, I was happy for her. Then an event coordinator approached me. "Claire?" I turned. "Yes?" She smiled professionally. "Family photos are starting in a few minutes." My heart lifted. "Okay." She checked something on her clipboard. "Could you wait over there until we call you?" I pointed toward my mother. "Shouldn't I join them?" She hesitated. "I'll let you know." Then she walked away. I stood there, waiting. A few minutes later, I saw Emily gathering everyone near the garden. Her mother, Daniel's parents, her grandparents, the bridesmaids, the groom's siblings, everyone. I started walking toward them. I wasn't rushing. I wasn't angry. I simply thought someone had forgotten to tell me where to stand. When I reached the edge of the group, Emily saw me. Our eyes met. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she walked toward me. Claire? Hey. She looked toward the photographer, then back at me. Can you do me a favor? I smiled. Of course. Her eyes moved toward the stone wall behind me. Could you just stand near the wall for these? I didn't understand. What? She lowered her voice. The family photos. I glanced at the people already gathered. I'm family. I know. Then why am I standing over there? She sighed. Claire, please don't make this difficult. I felt something tighten inside my chest. Difficult? It's just the photos. Then let me be in them. She looked uncomfortable. Then she said the words that changed everything. Emily needs the pictures to look right. I stared at her. What does that mean? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the photographer. Just stand near the wall, okay? I looked at my mother. She was standing beside Daniel's parents. She heard us. She knew exactly what Emily had said, but she looked away. That hurt more than Emily's words. I looked back at my sister. You really want me to stand there? Her face hardened slightly. Please, I nodded. Okay. I walked toward the wall. It was an old stone wall surrounding the garden. I placed my hand on the top. The stone was warm from the afternoon sun. Behind me, the photographer began arranging everyone. Closer together. Beautiful. Mom, move slightly left. Emily looked towards Daniel. Perfect. I stood alone, near the wall, exactly where my sister had put me. The photographer raised his camera. Flash. Another. Flash. I watched the family I had spent years helping create the perfect picture without me. My mother smiled. Emily laughed. Daniel wrapped an arm around her. Everyone looked happy. And I realized something. They weren't pretending. They genuinely believed the picture looked better without me. That realization hurt differently. It wasn't anger, it was clarity. Then the photographer said, "One more." Everyone moved closer, and I stayed by the wall. When the last photograph was taken, I lowered my hand. I turned around and walked into the reception hall. I needed a drink, maybe a few minutes alone, something, anything. I walked toward the seating area. My table was easy to find. Table 14. I recognized the number immediately. I walked toward it. Then I stopped. My chair was occupied. A young man was sitting there. He had a phone mounted on a small tripod and a ring light beside him. He was recording my mother. Tell everyone what today means to you. My mother smiled into the camera. Today means family. I stood there listening. Family. The word almost made me laugh. The young man finally noticed me. He looked at the place card in front of him, then at me. Oh, he picked up the card. Is this yours? I nodded. Yes. He looked embarrassed. Sorry, they told me this was my seat. I looked around. There were plenty of empty chairs at other tables, but not mine. My name was still printed on the little card. Claire Morgan. I picked it up. Then I noticed something. The young man's camera was pointed directly toward the family table. He wasn't family, but he was more valuable to Emily's picture than I was. I looked toward the head table. Emily was laughing with her new friends. She saw me holding my place card. Our eyes met. She didn't come over. She simply looked away. That was the moment something inside me finally stopped asking for an explanation. I didn't need one. The answer was sitting in front of me. My sister had chosen the picture, and I wasn't part of it. I reached into my handbag. My fingers touched the cream envelope. The wedding gift. $20,000. The largest gift I had ever planned to give anyone. I pulled it out. For a moment, I simply held it. Then I looked at Emily. She was surrounded by people, people who had come to celebrate her, people who mattered to her, people who looked right beside her. I looked down at the envelope, and suddenly the words I'd written on it felt different. For Emily and Daniel. With love. I slowly turned the envelope over. My name was written on the back. Claire. My hand tightened around it. I had spent years giving things away because I thought that was what love looked like. Money, time, opportunities, second chances, silence. And now, for the first time, I wondered what would happen if I stopped giving. I slipped the envelope back into my handbag. Then I picked up my place card. I didn't sit at another table. I didn't confront Emily. I didn't make a scene. I simply stood there for another few seconds. Then I walked toward the gift table, because if my sister wanted a perfect wedding, I was no longer going to help her pay for the picture. And this time, I wasn't taking my seat back. I was taking something much bigger back. So I took it back. I walked toward the gift table slowly. There were dozens of beautifully wrapped boxes arranged beneath a large floral arch. Some were small, some were enormous, some had handwritten cards attached. I placed my hand inside my handbag. The cream envelope was still there. For a moment, I simply stood there holding it. $20,000. That was what I had planned to give Emily. Not because she needed it, not anymore. Because I wanted to give my little sister something meaningful on the day she started a new life. I had spent weeks thinking about what to write in the card. I had finally settled on 4 simple words. Always here for you. Now those words felt like a lie, not because I wasn't her sister, but because I was finally beginning to understand that Emily had never expected me to be anything else. She expected me to be there, whenever she needed money, whenever she needed a problem solved, whenever she needed someone to clean up a mess. But when it came to standing beside her, I was told to stand near the wall. I looked toward the reception hall. Emily was laughing with a group of guests. She looked completely relaxed, like nothing had happened, like she hadn't just humiliated me, like she hadn't watched someone else sit in my chair. I wondered if she even cared that I was leaving. Then I saw my mother. She was talking to one of Emily's new friends. She glanced toward me. Our eyes met. For 1 second I thought she might come over. She didn't. She simply looked away. That was enough. I took the envelope out of my handbag. The cream paper looked almost too innocent in my hand. I turned it over. My handwriting was still there. For Emily and Daniel. With love, Claire. I stared at it. Then I slowly crossed out the words. Not dramatically, not angrily. Just one line through the sentence. I folded the card and slipped it into my handbag. The envelope went in beside it. A wedding coordinator approached me. Are you leaving already? I smiled. Yes. Is everything okay? I looked toward the ballroom. The music, the lights, the flowers, the people laughing. Everything looked perfect. Everything is fine. She smiled. Would you like me to call someone to walk you out? No, thank you. I didn't need anyone. Not this time. I walked toward the exit. I had almost reached the doors when I heard my name. Claire! I stopped. I turned around. Emily was standing several feet away. Her dress moved slightly as she walked toward me. She looked confused. You're leaving? Yes. But the reception just started. I know. She glanced at my handbag, then back at me. Did something happen? I almost smiled. Something happened. So many things had happened. But I didn't want to explain them there. Not while music played behind her, not while hundreds of people were watching, and certainly not on the day she'd spent months, making perfect. So I simply said, "I'm tired." She frowned. "You're not upset, are you?" I looked at her. There was something strange about hearing that question. She knew, maybe not everything, but enough. I shook my head. "No." She stepped closer. "Claire, please don't make this weird." I looked into her eyes. "I won't." She relaxed slightly. "Good." Then she smiled. "I'll call you tomorrow." I nodded. "Okay." She turned around and walked back toward the reception. I watched her for a few seconds. Then I left. The doors closed behind me. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel responsible for what happened next. Outside, the evening air was cool. I walked across the parking lot alone. Halfway to my car, I stopped. I looked back at the venue. Through the tall windows, I could see the warm lights, people dancing, Emily smiling, everyone celebrating. The perfect wedding. I reached into my handbag and touched the envelope. I could have handed it to her. I could have stayed. I could have pretended everything was fine. That was what the old Claire would have done. But I wasn't that Claire anymore. I got into my car. Before starting the engine, I opened my phone. There were already dozens of photographs being posted from the wedding. I scrolled through them. Emily and Daniel, Emily with her parents, Emily with the bridesmaids, Emily with the wealthy guests, Emily beside the people she wanted the world to see. Then I found one photograph from the family session. I zoomed in. There they all were, and in the far corner of the picture, barely visible through the garden entrance, was me, standing near the wall. I stared at it. Then I closed the photograph. I didn't delete it. I saved it. Because someday I knew I would need to remember exactly how I felt that night. Not for revenge, for clarity. I started the car. As I drove home, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "Thanks for understanding tonight. Love you." I stared at the screen at the next red light. Then I typed 3 words. "You're welcome, Emily." I didn't send them. I deleted the message. Then I turned off my phone. The next morning, Emily would wake up thinking everything had gone exactly as planned. She would see the photographs. She would see the comments. She would see thousands of people telling her how beautiful and perfect her wedding had been. But she wouldn't know one thing. The $20,000 envelope she'd expected to receive was still sitting in my handbag. And by Monday morning, another envelope would be waiting on her desk. That one wouldn't contain a gift. It would contain every payment I'd made, every promise she'd broken, and every dollar she had quietly moved without telling me. Because I wasn't going to ask my sister for an apology. I was going to ask her for the truth. A message from Emily. Monday morning, Emily woke up to hundreds of messages. Her wedding photos were everywhere. People were commenting on the flowers, the venue, her dress, the decorations, the photographs. Everyone was calling it perfect. Emily smiled as she scrolled through them from her hotel room. She had gotten exactly what she wanted. A wedding people would remember. A wedding that made her look successful. A wedding that made her business look bigger than it really was. Then her phone rang. It was her wedding coordinator. Emily answered with a smile. "Good morning." The woman's voice sounded nervous. "Emily, we have a problem." Emily's smile disappeared. "What kind of problem?" "There are several outstanding documents that need to be finalized." "What documents?" "The vendor reconciliation, the venue account, and the sponsorship paperwork." Emily sat up. "I thought everything was handled." "So did I." "What does that mean?" The coordinator hesitated. Some of the payments were made through your sister. Emily's expression changed. Claire. Yes. Emily looked toward the table beside her bed. Her phone, her wedding ring, a stack of unopened cards. Everything suddenly felt colder. What does Claire have to do with the sponsorship? I don't know all the details. Then find out. I already tried. Emily frowned. What happened? She hasn't responded. Emily laughed nervously. She probably just needs some time. But even as she said it, she knew that wasn't true. Claire always responded, even when she was angry, even when she was busy, even when Emily called at 2 in the morning. Claire always answered. This time she hadn't. Emily opened their message thread. The last message she had sent was from Saturday night. Thanks for understanding tonight. Love you. Claire hadn't replied. Emily stared at it. Then she noticed an email waiting in her inbox. The subject line made her stomach drop. Financial reconciliation, wedding expenses. She opened it. There was one attachment, a PDF. At the top was Claire's name. Emily scrolled. Venue deposit, catering, photography, florist, transportation, additional expenses, business transfers, personal expenditures. Emily's breathing became shallow. She kept scrolling. At the bottom was a total, $87,640. Her face went pale. That was how much Claire had paid toward the wedding and related expenses. Emily had known Claire was helping. She hadn't realized how much. Or maybe she had. She just hadn't wanted to think about it. Then she saw another page. It listed the transfers Claire had questioned. The money Emily had moved into her business account, the jewelry payment, the hotel, the marketing agency, the personal card. Every transaction had a date. Every transaction had a number. Every number had a description. There was nowhere to hide. Emily closed the laptop. No. She whispered it to herself. No, no, no. Her phone rang again. This time, it was her mother. Emily answered immediately. Mom, did Claire talk to you? There was a pause. Why? Because she's sending me financial records. Her mother's voice became quiet. What records? Everything. Another pause. Then her mother said, Maybe you should talk to her. Emily swallowed. I tried. Try again. I will. She ended the call. Then she opened her contacts. Claire. Her finger hovered over the name. She called. It rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Voicemail. Emily called again. Nothing. She sent a message. Claire, please call me. No response. Another message. We need to talk. Still nothing. Finally, she typed. What is this about? She stared at the message, then deleted it. Because she already knew what it was about. The wedding, the money, the lies, and the seat. She remembered Claire standing near the wall. She remembered the way her sister had looked at her. Not angry, not crying, just quiet. Emily had assumed that meant Claire accepted it. Now she wondered if it meant something else. It meant Claire had finally stopped fighting for a place she should never have had to ask for. That afternoon, Emily drove to Claire's office. She didn't tell anyone she was going. She wanted to talk privately. When she arrived, the receptionist looked up. Hi, can I help you? I'm here to see Claire Morgan. The woman checked the schedule. Do you have an appointment? No, I'm her sister. The receptionist looked at her computer. I'm sorry. She's not seeing anyone today. Emily frowned. I'm family. The receptionist gave her a polite smile. I understand. Can you just tell her I'm here? I already sent her a message. Emily waited. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing. Finally, the receptionist returned. She said she isn't available. Emily stared at her. She said that? Yes. Emily's face tightened. Did she say why? The receptionist shook her head. No. Emily turned away. She walked back toward the elevator. For the first time in years, she had no idea how to get Claire to help her. And that terrified her, because there was another problem. The wedding venue had been booked under a financial agreement that required Claire's final authorization. The sponsorship package was connected to Claire's business account, and one of the major promotional contracts couldn't be transferred without her signature. Emily had thought Claire was simply helping. She hadn't realized Claire was holding the entire structure together. She drove home. Daniel was waiting. He looked worried. What happened? Emily dropped her bag onto the sofa. Claire won't talk to me. Daniel frowned. Why? Emily looked at him, then she finally admitted it. I think she's done helping us. He stared at her. How much did she pay? Emily didn't answer. Emily, she whispered. Almost 90,000. Daniel's expression changed. What? I didn't know it was that much. He stared at her. You didn't know? I knew she was helping. That isn't the same thing. I was going to pay her back. When? Emily looked away. She didn't have an answer. Daniel sat down. What happens if she doesn't sign the remaining documents? Emily's eyes filled with panic. The sponsorship could fall apart. And the venue? I don't know. And the money? I don't know. For the first time since the wedding, Emily didn't care about photographs. She didn't care about social media. She didn't care about the perfect image. She cared about one person, the person she had told to stand near the wall. Emily picked up her phone. She opened Claire's contact again. This time, she didn't call. She typed a message. Claire, I'm sorry. She stared at it, then added, I know I hurt you. Please just give me one chance to explain. She sent it. The message showed as delivered. No response. 5 minutes passed. 10. An hour. Nothing. That evening, Emily found something on her desk. A cream envelope. She had forgotten about it. She picked it up. There was no name on the front. She opened it. Inside was a copy of the financial reconciliation, and underneath it was a handwritten note. Only one sentence. You told me where I belonged. I'm finally listening. Emily read it twice. Then she sat down. For the first time, she understood. Claire wasn't punishing her. She was leaving. And Emily suddenly realized something much worse than losing money. She might have lost her sister. Emily arrived at my office the next morning. This time, she didn't call first. She simply walked in. I was sitting behind my desk, reviewing a contract, when I heard the door open. I looked up. Emily stood there. No wedding makeup, no designer gown, no photographer, no guests, just my sister. She looked exhausted. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. Then she said my name. Claire. I closed the folder in front of me. Hi, Emily. She stepped inside. Can we talk? I nodded toward the chair. Sit. She sat down. Her hands were trembling slightly. I had never seen her like that. Usually Emily could walk into any room and control it. She knew what to say. She knew how to smile. She knew how to make people like her. But not that morning. That morning, she looked like someone who had finally run out of excuses. I got your records, she said. I assumed you would. She looked down. I didn't know it was that much. I didn't answer. I knew you'd helped with the wedding, she continued. She stopped. You just what? She looked at me. I didn't think about it. I almost smiled. That is the problem, Emily. She swallowed. I know. No. I leaned back. I don't think you do. She looked away. I opened the folder on my desk. Do you remember the venue deposit? Yes. $20,000. Yes. Do you remember telling me it was the most important part of your wedding? She nodded. I remember. And the money you said you needed for the florist? I thought the planner had. You knew it was already paid. Emily became silent. I turned another page. The hotel? She looked down. I needed somewhere to stay after the wedding. You had a house? I know. The jewelry? Silence. The marketing agency? She didn't answer. I closed the folder. Emily, I don't care about the money. She looked surprised. You don't? No. I took a breath. If I wanted the money back, I could have demanded it months ago. Then what do you want? I looked directly at her. The truth. Her eyes filled with tears. I was ashamed. Of what? That I couldn't afford the wedding I wanted. I waited. So instead of telling me, you kept taking money. She nodded. I thought I could fix it later. Later? Yes. When? She had no answer. I stood and walked toward the window. Outside, people were moving through the parking lot. Everyone going somewhere. Everyone living their own life. I looked at my reflection in the glass. I would have helped you, I said. Emily whispered. I know. No. You don't. I turned around. I would have helped you if you had told me the truth. She wiped her eyes. I was afraid you'd judge me. I shook my head. I never judged you for not having enough. I paused. I judged you when you pretended you had everything while secretly making me pay for the image. Emily looked down. That isn't fair. I stared at her. Neither was standing near the wall. She closed her eyes. I know. No, Emily. My voice remained calm. That wasn't about a chair. She looked at me. That was about everything. She started crying. I was stressed. I know. I wanted everything to be perfect. I know. I thought you would understand. I did understand. I took a breath. I understood so much that I forgot to ask whether you understood me. She looked confused. I continued. Do you know what I felt when you told me to stand near the wall? She shook her head. I felt stupid. Her eyes filled again. I had spent months helping you build that wedding. I paid bills you didn't tell me about. I solved problems you didn't even know how to solve. I paused. And on the one day I thought you might actually be proud to have me beside you, you decided I didn't look right in the picture. Emily covered her face. I'm sorry. I didn't move. I believe you. She looked up. You do? Yes. A small amount of hope appeared in her eyes. Then I continued. But being sorry doesn't undo what happened. Her face fell. I know. She reached into her handbag. I brought this. She placed a document on my desk. I looked at it. What is it? The repayment agreement. I opened it. Emily had listed the money she owed. All of it. The amount, the schedule, the interest, everything. I looked at her. You don't have to do this. I do. Why? Because you were right, she swallowed. I kept telling myself that because you were my sister, your help didn't have a price. She looked at the floor. But it did. I nodded slowly. The price wasn't money. She looked up. What was it? Respect. Silence filled the room. For the first time, neither of us tried to fill it. Then Emily said, Will you sign the sponsorship papers? I knew that question would come. I looked at the documents beside her. You came here because you need my signature. Her face tightened. No, you do. I came because I wanted to apologize. And the signature? She looked away. Yes, I nodded. At least you're being honest now. She looked embarrassed. I need it, Claire. I know. If I don't have it, the contract could fall apart. I know. And the business. She stopped. I waited. Finally, she whispered, I could lose everything. I looked at her for a long moment. Then I pushed the papers back across the desk. I won't sign them. Her eyes widened. Claire, please. No. Why? Because you built this business on an image you couldn't afford. She stared at me. And I'm not going to help you build another lie. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Then what am I supposed to do? I looked at my sister. For years, I had been the person who answered that question for her. Not anymore. You're going to do what I should have let you do years ago. What? Figure it out. She stared at me. I can't. Yes, you can. But what if I fail? I gave her a sad smile. Then you fail. She looked confused. You're really not going to help me. I am helping you. How? By finally letting you live with your own decisions. Emily looked down. I could see the anger rising behind her tears. You're punishing me. No. I shook my head. I'm not taking anything from you. I pointed toward the documents. I'm simply not giving you something anymore. She understood. My money, my time, my silence, my ability to fix every problem. She stood slowly. At the door, she stopped. Then she turned around. Claire? Yes? Did you really hate me that night? I felt my throat tighten. No. She looked surprised. I never hated you. Then why did you leave? I looked at her. Because I finally realized that loving you didn't mean I had to keep standing where you put me. She lowered her head. Then she walked out. The door closed softly behind her. I stood alone in my office. For the first time, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I had won. I simply felt free. And sometimes, freedom doesn't sound like applause. Sometimes, it sounds like a door closing quietly behind someone you love. 3 months passed after Emily walked out of my office. I didn't hear from her for almost 2 weeks. Then, one Monday morning, an envelope arrived at my office. There was no return address. I knew who it was from before I opened it. Inside was a check, the first payment toward the money Emily owed me. Behind it was a handwritten letter. I read it slowly. She didn't make excuses. She didn't blame the wedding planner. She didn't blame stress. She didn't blame Daniel. She didn't even blame me. She simply admitted what she had done. She wrote about the wedding, about the money, about the way she'd become obsessed with appearances. And then she wrote something that made me stop reading for a moment. I kept thinking the wedding had to look perfect because I was afraid people would see that I wasn't as successful as I pretended to be. I continued, but the person I was most afraid would see the truth was you. I folded the letter. For the first time, I understood Emily's behavior. It didn't excuse it, but I understood it. She had spent years trying to look like someone who had everything, and I had spent years making sure she never had to admit when she didn't. Maybe we'd both played a part in creating that relationship, but only one of us had finally decided to stop. A month later, Emily sent another payment, then another. Slowly, she began rebuilding her business. Not the way she'd imagined. She sold the luxury car, moved into a smaller office, cancelled several expensive subscriptions, and stopped pretending that every event had to look like a magazine cover. Her company became smaller, but more honest. And strangely enough, it became more successful. Without the expensive image, she started attracting clients who actually valued her work. One afternoon, I received a message. "Can I see you?" I stared at the screen. I typed, "Why?" Her answer came a few seconds later. "Not for money." I smiled despite myself. I agreed. We met at a small cafe near my office. Emily arrived 5 minutes early. She looked different. Not dramatically, just calmer. She wasn't wearing anything expensive. She wasn't checking her phone every few seconds. She sat across from me. Hi. Hi. For a moment we simply looked at each other. Then she said, I wanted to apologize again. You already did. I know. She took a breath. But this time I don't want anything. I nodded. Okay. She looked down at her coffee. I used to think you were lucky. I frowned. Lucky? Yes. She smiled sadly. You always seemed so confident. You didn't care what people thought. You never needed everyone to approve of you. I laughed softly. That's not true. It is now. I looked at her. She continued. I finally realized something. What? You weren't standing near the wall because you didn't belong. She paused. I put you there because I was embarrassed by the truth. I didn't respond. She looked into my eyes. You were the person who knew everything behind the curtain. The money, the problems, the mistakes, all of it, she swallowed, and I wanted everyone to see the perfect version of me. I nodded slowly. So you hid me. Yes. Her voice broke. I am so sorry. I reached across the table, not to erase what happened, not to pretend it never happened, just to acknowledge that I heard her. I forgive you, I said. Tears filled her eyes. But forgiveness doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was. I know. We'll have to rebuild. She nodded. I want to. And for the first time, I believed her. Not because she promised, because she no longer needed anything from me. We talked for another hour about our childhood, our father, our mother, the things we'd lost, the things we'd misunderstood, and eventually we laughed, a real laugh, the kind we hadn't shared in years. When we walked outside, Emily stopped beside my car. Claire? Yeah? Can I ask you one thing? Sure. She smiled. If you could go back to the wedding day, would you do anything differently? I thought about it. The wall, the empty chair, the photographs, the envelope, the moment I walked away. Then I smiled. No. She looked surprised. Nothing? Nothing. Why? I looked at her. Because that was the first day I finally understood something. What? That I don't have to earn a seat at a table where I'm loved. She nodded. I continued. I just have to choose a table where I belong. Emily smiled through her tears. I hope one day you'll sit beside me again. Maybe. I hugged her. It wasn't the same hug we'd shared before the wedding. It wasn't based on obligation. It wasn't about money. It wasn't about fixing anything. It was simply two sisters standing there, trying to figure out how to love each other without losing themselves. That evening, I went home and opened the drawer beside my bed. Inside was the cream envelope, the same one I'd carried to Emily's wedding. I had never given it to her. The $20,000 was still there. But I wasn't angry anymore. I took the money to my bank the next morning. I used it to fund something I'd postponed for years. My own office, my own space, my own dream. For the first time, I wasn't spending money to make someone else's life look perfect. I was investing in mine. A few months later, I moved into the new office. On the first morning, I stood near the window with a cup of coffee. There was no wedding dress, no photographer, no family posing behind me, no one telling me where to stand. Just sunlight coming through the glass. My phone buzzed. A message from Emily. Proud of you, sis. I smiled. Then I looked around my office. My name was printed on the door. Claire Morgan. I thought about the wedding, about the empty chair, about the wall, about how badly I'd wanted to be included in one photograph. And I finally understood. The greatest thing I took back that night wasn't $20,000. It wasn't my place at the table. It wasn't even my sister's respect. It was myself. For years, I had confused being needed with being loved. I thought as if I kept giving, people would keep me close. But love isn't supposed to make you disappear. And family isn't supposed to make you feel like you're lucky to be invited. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away quietly. Not because you hate them, not because you want revenge, but because you finally learned where you belong. I never got that wedding photograph, the one where I was supposed to stand beside my sister. And honestly, I'm glad. Because if I had been in that picture, I might have spent the rest of my life trying to stay in it. Instead, I walked away, and for the first time, I chose my own seat.